For 33 years, I convinced myself that keeping the peace was the same as belonging, but standing alone in a rented gown while my parents hosted a Super Bowl party on my dime. The illusion finally cracked. They didn't just miss my ceremony, they funded their celebration with a credit card in my name that afternoon. I didn't cry. I simply bought a one-way ticket to a city I had never seen and turned off my phone. The fluorescent lights of the break room at Miller Medical Supply always hummed with a sound that drilled straight into the base of my skull. It was a low, electric whine that felt like it belonged to a dentist's drill rather than a light fixture. I sat at the wobbly round table, my intermediate accounting textbook open next to a Tupperware container of cold pasta. My eyes burned. It was 2 p.m, but it felt like midnight. I was 33 years old. Most people my age were worrying about mortgages or toddler preschool schedules or promotions to senior management. I was worrying about whether I could finish my shift, drive 40 minutes to the university satellite campus, take a 3-hour final exam, and still have enough energy to drive home without falling asleep at the wheel. "Hey, Nat, can you sign for this delivery?" My boss, Gary, poked his head in. He was a decent man who tried too hard to be one of the guys. But he at least respected that I did the work of 3 people for the salary of 1. I closed the textbook, marking the page with a folded receipt. "I will be right there," I said. This was the rhythm of my life. It had been the rhythm for 10 years, a decade of stopping and starting, of taking 1 class a semester, of dropping out for a year to help my parents when Dad hurt his back, or when Mom needed help renovating the kitchen because the stress of the outdated cabinets was supposedly giving her migraines. I was the reliable one, the one who was always there to pick up the slack, to sign the delivery, to drive the car, to fix the printer. But not this week. This week was different. I walked out to the loading dock, signed the clipboard, and felt a strange, terrifying flutter in my chest. In 4 days, I was going to walk across a stage. It was not Harvard, and I was not 22, but I was going to be done. I had finally clawed my way to the finish line of a bachelor's degree in business administration. It mattered to me. I just needed it to matter to them. Later that evening, I pulled my beat-up sedan into the driveway of the house I still lived in. I paid rent, of course. My parents, Clay and Marlene Patterson, believed in teaching responsibility, which meant charging their adult daughter market rate for her childhood bedroom while they spent their weekends at wineries or upgrading their home theater system. The house was blazing with light. I could see my mother moving through the living room, gesturing wildly. I unlocked the front door and was hit by the smell of slow-cooked pork and the sound of my father's booming laugh. "There she is!" Clay shouted as I walked in. He was sitting in his recliner, a tablet in his lap. The working girl returns. Marlene looked up from a stack of fabric swatches spread across the dining table. "Natalie, thank God. I need your opinion. Deep crimson or stadium red?" I dropped my bag by the door, the weight of the textbook thudding against the floor. "What is this for?" I asked, rubbing my temples. "The Super Bowl party." "Obviously," Marlene said, her tone implying I was being intentionally dense. "The biggest night of the year, the Pattersons' annual bash. You know people expect a certain standard from us." I stiffened. The Super Bowl was this Sunday. My graduation was Saturday morning. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice level, "I told you this morning. I told you last week." "My graduation ceremony is Saturday at 10 in the morning." Marlene waved a hand dismissively. Turning back to the swatches, I know. Saturday morning. We will figure it out. But the party is Sunday, and we are behind schedule. I need you to go to the wholesale club tomorrow after work. We need 500 plastic cups, the sturdy ones, not the cheap ones that crack, and we need 40 pounds of ice. I stared at her. I have my final shift tomorrow, and then I have to pick up my cap and gown. Clay looked up from his tablet, his brow furrowing. "Natalie, do not be difficult. Your mother is under a lot of pressure. This party is important for my networking. You know that. It is always important," I said, feeling the familiar heat rising in my throat. "But I'm graduating from college on Saturday. It has taken me 10 years. I would really like to talk about the plan for that. Are you coming to the ceremony? Marlene sighed, a long, tragic sound that suggested I was physically wounding her. Of course we are proud of you, Natalie, but Saturday is the prep day. The caterers are dropping off the platters at noon. The rental company is bringing the chairs. We cannot just abandon the house. So you are not coming? I asked. The question hung in the air, fragile and sharp. We will try, Marlene said, not looking at me. It is just a terrible time. Who schedules a graduation on Super Bowl weekend? It is practically un-American. I stood there, still wearing my coat, feeling the distance between us stretching out like a canyon. It was not un-American. It was just a date on a calendar. But in the Patterson household, nothing existed unless it served the image of the Patterson household. I went to my room and closed the door. On my bed, a large envelope sat waiting. It was the official schedule from the university, along with 4 tickets for family seating. I had requested the maximum, just in case. I stared at the tickets. They looked like play money. The next day, my phone buzzed while I was at work. It was an email confirmation from a party rental company. Thank you for your deposit. Natalie, we have you listed as the primary host contact for the Patterson event. We will see you Saturday at 11 a.m. for the tent setup. I froze. I had not called a rental company. I had not given anyone my email for this. I dialed my mother immediately. She answered on the second ring, sounding breathless. Hello? Mom, why am I getting emails from a tent rental company? I asked. And why am I listed as the host contact? Oh, that, she said breezily. Dad needed a contact name for the file. And you know he is terrible with emails. He never checks them. We figured since you are so organized, you could handle the logistics. It is just coordination. Natalie. You put my name down for a tent setup at 11 in the morning on Saturday, I said, my voice rising. I will be walking across the stage at 11 in the morning. Lower your voice, Marlene snapped. You are at work. I am not doing it. I said, I am not coordinating the tent. I am graduating. Natalie, stop making a big deal out of this, she said, her voice dropping to that dangerous, disappointed register she used when I was a child. We just need someone to sign for the tent. If you are at your ceremony, then you are at your ceremony. But do not act like we are asking you to donate a kidney. We are a family. We help each other. I hung up. My hands were shaking. It was not the request itself. It was the assumption, the absolute certainty that my time, my name, and my life were merely extensions of their needs. Thursday arrived. The house was already transforming. Furniture was being pushed against walls, and the smell of cleaning chemicals was thick in the air. I walked into the kitchen to find my younger sister, Brooke, sitting on the counter, eating a yogurt. Brooke was 27, beautiful, and floated through life on a cloud of charisma that I had never possessed. She worked vaguely in marketing for a startup that no one quite understood, and she lived in a condo downtown that I was fairly certain Dad paid for. Hey, Nat, she chirped. Exciting weekend, huh? I looked at her, searching for a sign that she remembered. Yeah, I said. Are you coming on Saturday? She frowned, spoon hovering halfway to her mouth. Saturday? What is Saturday? My graduation. I said. Oh, right, she laughed. A bright, tinkling sound. God, I forgot that was finally happening. Good for you. That is awesome. So, are you coming? I asked again. She grimaced. Ooh, I would love to, really. But Todd is coming into town Friday night. Who is Todd? My new boyfriend, she said, beaming. He is amazing. He is an investment banker. Dad is going to love him. We are bringing him to the party on Sunday. It is kind of a big deal. My father walked into the kitchen then, carrying a case of wine. There is my star, he boomed, grinning at Brooke. Ready for the big reveal? Brooke giggled. Dad, stop. It is just a boyfriend. It is Brooke's coming out as an adult, Clay announced, setting the wine down, bringing a serious man to the Patterson Super Bowl bash. That is the real main event this weekend. I stood by the refrigerator, holding a glass of water. I was wearing my work uniform. I had dark circles under my eyes from studying for my last final. I was right there, 3 feet away from them. "What about my graduation?" I asked. Clay turned to me, his smile fading slightly, as if I had reminded him of an unpaid bill. "We are proud of you." "Natalie, we said that. But Brooke is bringing a guest. We have to make sure the house is ready. You understand priorities, do you not? You are the business major." I understood priorities perfectly. I understood that I was not one. I went to work on Friday like a ghost. I filed papers. I answered phones. I smiled at Gary. Inside, I was hollow. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a text from my parents saying they had figured it out, that they had moved the tent setup, that they would be there in the front row. Nothing came. Saturday morning broke with a gray steel-colored sky. I woke up at 6. The house was silent. I put on a pot of coffee, moving quietly so I would not wake anyone. I showered, dried my hair, and did my makeup with more care than usual. I put on the white dress I had bought 3 months ago, the one I had saved for. I walked into the kitchen. There was a note on the counter in my mother's looping handwriting. "Nat, caterers coming early. Need you to clear the fridge shelf before you go. Good luck today." That was it. Good luck today. Not, "We love you." Not, "We will be there." I cleared the fridge shelf. I threw away the old leftovers and made space for the trays of shrimp and sliders that would feed everyone else tomorrow. Then I put on my coat, grabbed my cap and gown from the hook by the door, and walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for 5 minutes, just breathing. I sent a text to the family group chat, "Leaving for the ceremony now. It starts at 10 o'clock. Hope to see you there." I watched the screen. Delivered. No response. I drove to the university arena. The parking lot was jammed with cars. Families were spilling out of minivans, carrying bouquets of flowers and balloons. Fathers were adjusting their sons' ties. Mothers were fixing their daughters' hair. There was so much noise, so much laughter. I walked to the check-in table alone. The volunteer handed me my name card. "Patterson, Natalie," she read. "Congratulations. Dear, is your family here?" "They are running late." I lied. My voice sounded thin. I went to the staging area and put on my gown. The black fabric felt heavy. I adjusted the mortarboard on my head and looked in the bathroom mirror. I looked like a graduate. I looked like someone who had accomplished something. I checked my phone again. Nothing. I dialed my mother. It went to voicemail. I dialed my father. It rang 4 times, and then he declined the call. A second later, a generic text appeared. "Can't talk right now." I walked into the arena and found my seat in the row of business majors. The chair next to me belonged to a girl named Sarah, who I had shared a statistics class with. She was waving at a large group of people in the stands. "There they are," Sarah squealed. "My grandma flew in from Florida. Can you believe it?" "That is wonderful," I said. "Where are your folks?" she asked. Scanning the crowd, I looked up at the sea of faces, thousands of people, cheering, waving signs, blowing air horns. I scanned the section where my tickets were for Section 104, Row G. The 4 seats were empty. "They got stuck in traffic," I said. The lie tasted like ash. The ceremony began. The dean spoke about resilience, about the future, about the support systems that had gotten us here. He asked the parents and spouses to stand up. "Will the families of our graduates please rise?" The roar was deafening. All around me, students turned to wave at their standing families. Sarah was blowing kisses. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, staring straight ahead at the stage. I did not turn around. If I turned around, I would cry. And I refused to cry in a room full of strangers. A woman sitting on the other side of me, a stranger, touched my arm. She was an older woman, holding a program. "Here, honey," she whispered. "You look like you need a program." My husband grabbed 2. "Thank you," I whispered back. I opened the program and found my name. Natalie Jean Patterson. It was there. It was real. Halfway through the reading of the liberal arts names, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out, shielding the screen with my sleeve. It was a notification from Instagram. Marlene Patterson posted a photo. I clicked it. The photo was high definition, bright and saturated. It showed my parents standing in our living room. My father was wearing his lucky football jersey. My mother was wearing a red sweater with a sequined football on it. They were holding champagne flutes, smiling that wide, camera-ready smile that they practiced in the mirror. Behind them hung a massive vinyl banner, Patterson Family Tradition. The caption read, "Kickoff weekend starts now. Nothing is more important than family. So blessed to host our 20th annual Super Bowl bash. Hashtag Family First, hashtag Patterson Party, hashtag Tradition." I stared at the screen. The timestamp was 12 minutes ago. They were not stuck in traffic. They were not running late. They were home, drinking champagne, posing for likes, under a banner about family tradition, while their daughter sat alone 5 miles away. My vision blurred. The rage was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. It was not a hot, fiery anger. It was something deeper. It was the absolute realization that I was a prop in their lives. I was useful when I was signing for deliveries or moving furniture or fixing their credit score, but I was invisible when I needed to be seen. Natalie Patterson. The announcer called my name. I stood up. My legs felt mechanical. I walked to the stage. I did not look at the stands. I walked across, took the diploma cover from the dean, shook his hand, and smiled for the professional photographer. Click. That was it. 10 years of work. Click. I walked back to my seat. But I did not sit down. I kept walking. I walked up the aisle, past the cheering families, past the security guards, and out the side exit. I took off the gown in the parking lot and threw it in the back seat of my car. I drove home in silence. When I pulled into the driveway, the music was already blaring. It was only 1 in the afternoon on Saturday, but the pre-party had apparently begun. There were 3 strange cars in the driveway. I walked into the house. The living room was full of people, neighbors, some of my dad's clients, and Brooke, who was clinging to the arm of a tall man with perfect hair. "Look who it is," Clay shouted, raising a beer. "The graduate." A few people clapped politely. Marlene rushed over, holding a tray of deviled eggs. "You are back early," she said. "How was it? Was it long? We were just so swamped." "Natalie, you have no idea. The ice delivery was late." I looked at her. I looked at the sequined football on her sweater. "You missed it," I said. "Oh, honey, do not be dramatic," Marlene said, her smile tightening. "You knew what today was. We have been planning this party for months. You cannot expect the world to stop turning." I looked at Brooke. She offered a sympathetic grimace but stayed glued to her boyfriend. "Congrats, Nat," Brooke called out. "Your cap is so cute. Did you keep the tassel?" "Cute. My degree was cute." I walked past them, heading for the stairs. Clay stepped in my path, looking jovial, but with that underlying edge of authority. "Hey, do not run off," he said. "We need you to help run the grill in the back. I have got 20 pounds of wings going on. I am not running the grill," I said. Clay laughed. "Come on, everyone pitches in. It is the Patterson way. Besides, we need to justify the expense. Do you know how much this shindig cost?" He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "We used the points from that credit card we opened in your name," he said, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The travel rewards one. It was just easier, you know? Your credit is so much more responsible than mine right now. I figured you would want to contribute to the family event." The world stopped. The noise of the party, the music, the laughter. It all turned into a dull roar. "You used my credit card?" I asked. "The one I opened for emergencies?" Clay shrugged. "It is just points, Nat, and I put the deposit for the venue on it too. Do not worry. I will pay the minimums. It helps your credit score. You should thank me." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me, the man who had skipped my graduation to eat chicken wings and impress his neighbors, and who had paid for the privilege using my name. He did not see me as a daughter. He saw me as a resource, a line of credit, a staff member. "I'm going to lie down," I said quietly. Clay rolled his eyes. Fine, be a wet blanket, but come down in an hour. We need help with the trash. I walked up the stairs. I entered my room and locked the door. I sat on the edge of my bed. I was shaking. My hands were vibrating so hard I had to clasp them together to stop it. The rage was rising up my throat, choking me. They had stolen my day. They had stolen my money. They had stolen my credit. And they had done it while smiling and telling me I was the one being difficult. I looked around the room. The childhood posters I had never taken down. The desk where I had spent thousands of hours studying. The closet full of clothes I wore to a job I hated to pay rent to people who did not care if I existed. I was done. I was 33 years old, and I was done. I pulled my laptop onto my lap. My fingers flew across the keys. I did not look for logic. I did not look for a plan. I looked for distance. Flights from here to anywhere. I scrolled past New York. Too close. Past Chicago. Too cold. Brighton Harbor. I did not know where it was. I clicked the map. It was on the coast. Far away. A mid-sized city. It looked like nothing. It looked like blank space. One way. Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. The ticket price was $400. I had $600 in my checking account. I entered my debit card number. I hit purchase. Booking confirmed. I closed the laptop. I stood up and pulled my 2 largest suitcases out from under the bed. I did not pack everything. I packed what mattered. My diploma cover, my laptop, my practical clothes, my comfortable shoes. I left the prom dress. I left the high school yearbooks. I left the stuffed animals. I packed my life into 2 bags. Downstairs, the party was getting louder. Someone had turned up the bass. I could hear them chanting my father's name. Clay, Clay, Clay. They were celebrating. They were having the time of their lives. I zipped the second suitcase shut. I was not going to help with the trash. I was not going to run the grill. I was not going to be the host contact. I lay down on top of the covers, fully dressed, my shoes still on. I stared at the ceiling fans spinning above me. I did not sleep. I listened to the sounds of my family enjoying a life built on my back, and I waited for the sun to rise. The zipper of my suitcase sounded loud in the silent house, a metallic tear that I was sure would wake my father. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I waited, from the master bedroom down the hall. I heard the rhythmic, heavy snoring that had been the soundtrack of my childhood. He was asleep. They were all asleep. It was 4 a.m. on Super Bowl Sunday. Downstairs, the living room was staged for the party. The banner was up. The red plastic cups were stacked in pyramids. The smell of stale beer from the pre-party hung faintly in the air. I moved like a burglar in my own home. I carried my 2 suitcases down the stairs, stepping over the creaky board on the 3rd step that I had learned to avoid when I was 16. I placed the bags by the front door and walked into the kitchen. I did not want to write a letter. A letter implied a conversation. A letter implied that I cared about their reaction. But I knew if I just vanished, they would call the police, not out of worry, but because it would look bad for the neighbors if their daughter went missing. I tore a piece of paper from the notepad by the fridge. I clicked a pen. My hand was steady. I am taking a job opportunity out of state. It came up last minute. I will be busy getting settled, so I will not be reachable for a while. Do not file a missing persons report. I am safe. I just need space. Good luck with the party. I left the note on the counter, next to the tray of defrosting sliders. I weighed it down with the salt shaker. I walked out the front door and closed it softly. The click of the latch was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The Uber driver was a quiet man who did not ask why I was going to the airport before the sun was up. I sat in the back seat and watched the dark houses of my neighborhood blur past. I had lived here my whole life. I had driven these streets to school, to work, to the pharmacy, to pick up my mother's prescriptions, to the liquor store to buy my father's beer. I had paved these streets with my own invisible labor. At the airport, I printed my boarding pass. Gate B4. Destination, Brighton Harbor. I had chosen it blindly, but as I sat at the gate, I looked it up on my phone one last time. It was a logistics hub, a working city on the coast. It was not a vacation town. It was a place where people went to work. That felt right. As the boarding announcement began, I took my phone out of my pocket. I had 99% battery. I held down the power button. The screen went black. I put the phone in the bottom of my carry-on bag. Underneath my socks, I walked onto the plane, found my seat by the window, and for the first time in 10 years, I did not check to see if anyone needed me. I just closed my eyes. Brighton Harbor smelled like salt and diesel. It was a gray city, built of brick and steel, hugging a bay that looked choppy and cold. I loved it immediately. It looked nothing like the manicured suburbs I had left. It looked like a place that did not care what your lawn looked like. I took a cab to the address I had found on a short-term rental site. It was a basement studio in a triple-decker house in a neighborhood called East End. The landlady, Mrs. Gable, was a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She took my cash deposit, gave me a key, and told me no loud music after 10. I do not listen to loud music. I said, "Good," she said. I unlocked the door to the unit. It was one room, a bed, a small kitchenette, a table, and a bathroom the size of a closet. The window was at street level, looking out at the tires of parked cars. I sat on the bed. It was hard. The sheets smelled of detergent and old dust. I waited for the panic to set in. I waited for the crushing guilt. The voice of my mother telling me I was selfish. The voice of my father telling me I was incompetent. I waited to feel lost, but the panic did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, vibrating energy. I looked at my hands. They were not shaking. I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. Usually, by 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday, I would have been running back and forth between the kitchen and the living room, refilling chip bowls, taking coats, managing the emotional temperature of the house like a human thermostat. Here, the only sound was the refrigerator humming. I stood up, I unpacked my clothes, I put my laptop on the table, I made a cup of tea using the electric kettle. I was alone, and I was free. I spent the next 3 days in a fugue state of productivity. I did not turn my phone on. I went to the local library and used their computers to polish my resume. I walked the streets of Brighton Harbor, learning the bus routes, finding the cheapest grocery store. I slept 8 hours a night. I woke up without an alarm. I realized, with a jolt of anger, that I had not been chronically fatigued for the last decade. I had just been exhausted by them. On Thursday, I landed an interview. It was for an administrative coordinator position at Harborgate Transit Solutions, a mid-sized logistics firm near the docks. The building was a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and glass. I wore my graduation dress, paired with a blazer I had bought at a thrift store down the street. I sat in the waiting area, watching people move with purpose, phones ringing, forklifts beeping in the distance. It felt real. Natalie? I looked up. A woman was standing in the doorway of an office. She was about 40, wearing a sharp navy suit and glasses that framed intelligent, dark eyes. "I am Dana Wu," she said, extending a hand. "Come on in." I followed her into her office. It was organized chaos, whiteboards covered in shipping routes, stacks of manifests, 3 monitors on her desk. She sat down and picked up my resume. She did not look at me. She looked at the paper. "You have a degree in business administration," she said, "freshly minted. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said, "but you have 10 years of work experience at Miller Medical Supply." She continued, "And before that, retail. You worked full-time while getting the degree?" "Yes." I said, "Night classes." Dana looked up then. She studied my face. It was not a judgmental look. It was an assessment. "Tell me about your day-to-day at Miller," she said. "Not what is on the paper. What did you actually do?" I took a breath. I straightened my spine. "I managed the inventory database for the Tri-County region," I said, "but officially, I was an admin. In reality, I handled the routing for the delivery drivers when the software went down, which was often. I reconciled the petty cash. I trained the new hires on the compliance protocols. And I handled the vendor disputes because the owner did not like confrontation. Dana nodded slowly. She tapped a pen against the desk. So you are the person who fixes things before the boss knows they are broken, she said. Yes, I said. That is exactly what I am. Dana smiled. It was a small, dry smile. I like that, she said. We are a logistics company. Natalie, our entire business is fixing things before they break. We move freight for some very demanding clients. If a shipment is late, I do not need excuses. I need someone who has already found a reroute. I can do that. I said, I have been doing that my whole life. I believe you, Dana said. She closed the folder. You are overqualified for the front desk. But I need someone smart in the operations support role. It pays $22 an hour to start. Benefits after 90 days. My heart leaped. That was $4 more an hour than I made at Miller. That sounds perfect, I said. Great, Dana said. I just need to run the standard background check and call your references. I see you listed your supervisor at Miller. Anyone else? I froze. The reference sheet in my folder had Gary's name, and it had a professor from the university. But most applications required 3. Usually, people listed a family friend or a former boss. I can provide a professor. I said. Dana looked at me. Is there an issue with your previous employers? No. I said quickly, it is just, I left my last situation abruptly. There is some personal family conflict involved. Dana's eyes narrowed slightly. She leaned back in her chair. Natalie, she said, I do not care about your personal life. I care if you show up and do the work. If Gary at Miller says you are solid, that is good enough for me. But I need to be able to verify your history. I can give you Gary. I said, he will vouch for me. Fine, she said. I will call him today. If he clears you, you start Monday. I walked out of the building feeling like I was floating. I had a job. I had a life. I walked back to the sublet, bought a sandwich from a deli, and sat on my bed. I looked at my suitcase where my phone was buried. I had to do it. I needed to check my email for the offer letter from Dana. I needed to transfer money to pay Mrs. Gable for the next week. I pulled the phone out. I took a deep breath. I turned it on. The device vibrated in my hand. It vibrated for a solid 2 minutes. It buzzed and danced across the mattress like a living thing. 47 missed calls, 82 text messages, 14 voicemails. I stared at the screen. The names flashed by. Mom, Dad, Brooke, Mom, Dad. I opened the messages. Clay. Where are you? The party is starting. Marlene. This is not funny. Natalie, pick up. Brooke. Nat, are you okay? Mom is freaking out. Clay. You are embarrassing us. People are asking where you are. Marlene. How could you do this to me? On Super Bowl Sunday? Clay. If you are not home in an hour, do not bother coming back. Marlene. Please, honey, we are worried. Just call. Clay. You stole the car keys? No. Never mind. Found them. You stole from this family by leaving us high and dry. Marlene. You are punishing us. That is what this is. You are cruel. Natalie. Just like your grandmother. I read them with a detachment that surprised me. They were not worried about my safety. They were worried about the optics. They were worried about the disruption to their service. Then, a new notification popped up at the top of the screen. It was not a text. It was an alert from my bank app. Chase fraud alert. Did you attempt a charge of $500 at Patterson event venue? Reply yes or no. I stared at the timestamp. Yesterday, Tuesday, I had been in Brighton Harbor on Tuesday. I opened my email. There was another alert from the credit card company, the one Clay had used for points. Transaction declined. Card not present. Amount, $2,500. Merchant. Luxury linens. Decor. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. They were still using the card. I had left 3 days ago. I had told them I was gone, and they were still swiping my name. I dialed the number on the back of my debit card first. I navigated the automated menu until I got a human. "This is the fraud department," the voice said. "Hi," I said. "My name is Natalie Patterson. I need to report unauthorized activity." I gave them my information. The agent typed for a moment. "Ms. Patterson, we see a pattern of attempts in the last 48 hours. We declined the large one at the linen store because the zip code entered did not match the billing address on file." "Wait," I said. "What billing address is on file?" "I cannot give you that information unless you verify your identity," the agent said. I gave him my social security number, my mother's maiden name, my high school mascot. "Okay," he said. "The billing address on file was updated last week to 442 Oak Street." I stopped breathing. 442 Oak Street was my parents' house, but I moved my billing address to a P.O. box 6 months ago. I said, specifically so, my mail would not go to the house, according to our logs. The change was made via the online portal. The agent said, the user had the correct login credentials. I felt sick. The login credentials. I had written them down in a notebook I kept in my desk drawer, a notebook labeled passwords. My parents had gone into my room. They had gone through my desk. They had found the login, and they had changed the address back to their house so they could hide the statements. "Cancel the card," I said. "Cancel everything. Done," the agent said. "We will send a new card to—" "Which address?" I gave him the address of the sublet in Brighton Harbor. "Do not let anyone change it," I said. "Put a password on the account, a verbal password." "We can do that," he said. "What would you like it to be?" "One way," I said. After I hung up, I sat there, shaking. This was not just insensitivity, this was theft. I opened my text thread with Brooke. I needed to know how deep this went. Me. "Hey, I am alive. Stop blowing up my phone." The response came in 3 seconds. Brooke. "Oh my God. Nat, where are you? Mom is losing her mind. She has been crying for 3 days. Me. "I am fine. I moved. I am not coming back." Brooke. "What? You can't just leave. What about the family? Dad is saying you had a mental breakdown." Me. "I did not have a breakdown. I woke up." Brooke. "Did you know Dad was using my credit card?" Brooke. "What? No. I don't know anything about your money. You know I don't pay attention to that stuff." Me. "Really? Because someone changed the mailing address on my account so I wouldn't see the bills. Dad couldn't figure out how to use a PDF if his life depended on it. He would need help." Brooke. "I didn't do it. I swear. Dad just asked me to help him log in to verify the venue deposit. He said you agreed to it. He said you wanted the points for a trip." I stared at the screen. Me. "I never told you about the points." Brooke stopped typing. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Brooke. "Well, Dad said the interest rate was low anyway, so it wasn't a big deal." I closed my eyes. The interest rate was low. I had never told Dad the interest rate. I had never told anyone. The only place that information existed was on the paper statement. Brooke had seen the statements. She had been opening my mail. Me. "You opened my mail." Brooke. "I didn't. It was on the counter. Look, Nat, don't make this about me. Dad is really mad. He says you owe him for raising you. Just come home and fix this." I did not reply. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my mother. Then I blocked my father. I went to my laptop. I needed to see the damage. I went to the free annual credit report site. I typed in my social security number. The report generated. It was a long PDF. I scrolled past the student loans, past the car payment. There was the credit card. Balance $4,000. And then there was something else. Utility provider. Metro Electric Gas. Status. Past due. Service address. 19 Industrial Way. Unit B. Westbridge Hills. Opened. 3 years ago. I stared at the address. 19 Industrial Way. I had never lived at 19 Industrial Way. I did not know what was at 19 Industrial Way. I copied the address into a search engine. The map zoomed in. It was a strip of warehouses on the edge of town. Near the old textile mill, the search results showed a business listing attached to that address. Patterson Event Concepts. Clay Patterson. CEO, Marlene Patterson. Creative Director. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. Patterson Event Concepts. My parents did not have a business. My father was a regional sales manager for a siding company. My mother was a housewife who volunteered at the library. They threw parties. Yes. They were social climbers. Yes. But a business? I looked at the utility bill again. It was in my name, Natalie Patterson. They had opened a utility account for a warehouse space in my name 3 years ago. Why? Because their credit was shot. I knew that. They had filed for bankruptcy when I was in high school. They lived on cash and appearances. But if the utilities were in my name, what else was? My phone rang. It was a local number, Brighton Harbor area code. I picked it up, my voice trembling. Hello? Natalie? This is Dana Wu from Harborgate. I cleared my throat. I tried to sound like a professional admin, not a woman who had just discovered she was a human shield for her parents' financial secrets. Hi, Dana. Thanks for calling. I just got off the phone with Gary at Miller Medical. Dana said. Her voice was unreadable. Oh, I said, what did he say? He said you were the best employee he ever had. Dana said, he said he was devastated to lose you. He gave you a glowing review. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Thank God. However, Dana continued, he also mentioned that when he tried to call you yesterday to ask where a file was, your father answered your phone and screamed at him. I closed my eyes. I had left my work cell phone on my desk at home. I had forgotten to return it. Dana, I am so sorry. I said, that is humiliating. Natalie. Dana said, I do not care about family drama, but I need to know if this is going to be a problem. Are your parents going to be showing up here? Are they going to be calling the office line? No, I said firmly. I have blocked them. I have moved. They do not know where I am. I am handling it. Okay, Dana said. But here's the thing. Gary is a great reference for your work ethic, but for the background check, we need to verify your past addresses. The system is flagging a discrepancy. It says you have an active utility account at a commercial address in West Bridge Hills. My stomach dropped. The background check had already found it. That is an error, I said weakly. Is it? Dana asked. Because usually, these checks are pretty accurate. Natalie, I want to hire you. You are smart, and you clearly know how to handle chaos, but I cannot hire someone with pending identity fraud issues unless I know they are the victim, not the perpetrator. I gripped the phone. I had a choice. I could lie, and she would find out. Or I could tell the truth to a woman I had met once. I took a risk. My parents. I said, my parents used my information to open accounts without my permission. I just found out an hour ago. I am freezing my credit and filing a report. That address, it is theirs, not mine. I have never been there. There was a silence on the line. I listened to the hum of the refrigerator. Okay, Dana said finally. Okay, I asked. If you are filing a report. Bring me the case number, she said, and bring me your tax returns from the last 2 years. If I can see that your income matches your W-2s and not some phantom business, I can override the flag in HR. You would do that? I asked. I told you, Dana said. I need someone who can fix problems. It sounds like you are fixing a big one. If you can handle your parents, you can handle our trucking dispatchers. Thank you, I whispered. Bring the papers on Monday, Dana said. And Natalie? Yes? Keep your phone off until then. You need to sleep. She hung up. I put the phone down. I looked at the credit report. I looked at the note from the fraud department. I was not just a daughter they neglected. I was a front. I was a shell company. I walked to the window and looked out at the street level. A stray cat was walking along the curb. I was not going back. I was going to get those documents. I was going to file those reports. And I was going to work for Dana Wu. I had come here to hide. But now, I realized I could not just hide. I had to sever the limb to save the body. I sat back down at the computer. I opened a new tab. How to file a police report for identity theft against family members. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the enter key. It was the nuclear option. It was the end of everything. I thought about the graduation ceremony. I thought about the empty seats. I thought about the banner. Patterson family tradition. I hit enter. The rhythm of the logistics industry was soothing in a way I had never expected. At Miller Medical, every day had been a series of fires to put out. Panicked pharmacists, missing drivers, my father calling to demand I navigate him through his own Netflix account. But at Harborgate Transit Solutions, the chaos was contained within spreadsheets and tracking numbers. It was impersonal. It was solvable. For the first month, I kept my head down. I arrived at 8 in the morning, 30 minutes early, and sat at my desk in the operations bullpen. I learned the proprietary software in 3 days. I reorganized the digital filing system for the West Coast routes in a week. Dana Wu watched me with a sort of quiet approval, tossing me file after file, testing my breaking point. I did not break. Compared to managing the emotional volatility of the Patterson household, rerouting a shipment of frozen cod from Seattle to Boise was a vacation. I slowly began to realize that the people around me were not waiting for me to fail. They were just working. My desk neighbor was a man named Mateo Alvarez. He was about my age, with a perpetually wrinkled button-down shirt and a thermos of coffee that smelled like jet fuel. He handled the rail freight coordination. For the first 2 weeks, we exchanged nothing but polite nods. Then, one Tuesday, he rolled his chair into the aisle and looked at me. "You have not eaten lunch in 9 days," Mateo said. I looked up from my dual monitors. "I am fine. I eat a big breakfast." Mateo shook his head. "No, you do not. I hear your stomach growling over the sound of the air conditioner. It is distracting my dispatchers." He slid a foil-wrapped sandwich onto the corner of my desk. "My mother made empanadas," he said. "She made too many. If I eat them all, I will fall asleep during the 2 o'clock conference call, and Dana will fire me. Please, you are doing me a favor." I looked at the foil. It was warm. "Thank you," I said. It became a ritual. Mateo was not flirting. There was no lingering eye contact, no double meanings in his words. He was just observant. He saw a woman who was vibrating with anxiety and trying to make herself invisible, and he offered consistency. He talked about his brothers, his obsession with vintage synthesizers, and his annoyance with the price of gas. He never asked why I had no photos on my desk. He never asked why I flinched when the office phone rang too loudly. He was the first male presence in my life who did not require me to manage his ego. By the second month, I had saved enough money to buy a decent mattress for my sublet. I had also enrolled in the company's employee assistance program, which offered 6 free therapy sessions. I was skeptical, but Dana had mentioned it in onboarding with a pointed look, so I went. My therapist was a woman named Dr. Aris. She was small, severe, and did not offer tissues when I cried. She offered vocabulary. I sat in her beige office on a rainy Thursday evening, twisting the strap of my bag. "I just feel guilty," I said. "I feel like I abandoned them." My dad posted a photo of the empty table at Sunday dinner, and I felt sick. "Doctor." Aris looked at me over her glasses. "Natalie," she said, "imagine you are a battery. You have a limited charge. For 33 years, your parents have plugged everything they own into you. The toaster, the television, the lights, the heater. They ran their entire house on your energy. Now you have unplugged yourself. Of course the house went dark, but that does not mean you are responsible for the electricity." It felt different than that. I said, "It felt like they loved me, but they just needed a lot of help." "Did they need help, doctor?" Aris asked. "Or did they need a resource?" I stared at the carpet. "There is a difference between a parent who struggles and a parent who extracts," she said. "You describe a dynamic where your competence was the currency you paid for their affection. When you stopped paying, the transaction ended. That is not family. Natalie, that is a business arrangement where you are the silent partner who takes all the risk." Her words rattled around in my head for days. A business arrangement. I did not know how literal she was until the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday. I was used to the mail at the sublet being mostly flyers for pizza places or previous tenants' junk. But this envelope was different. It was thick, white, and had a window on the front. The return address was the State Department of Revenue. It was addressed to Natalie Patterson, care of Patterson Event Concepts. I stood in the narrow hallway of the triple-decker, holding the envelope. My hands went cold. I had frozen my credit. I had locked down my bank accounts. But the mail had found me because I had forwarded my personal mail to a P.O. box in Brighton Harbor, and the state had likely cross-referenced my social security number. I opened it. The header was in bold red ink. Final notice: delinquent sales and use tax filing. I scanned the page. The numbers swam before my eyes. Taxpayer ID, ending in 4492. Business name: Patterson Event Concepts. Responsible party: Natalie J. Patterson. Amount due: $3,420. I walked into my apartment and sat on the floor. I did not own a business. I had never sold anything in my life. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the notice. I sat on hold for 40 minutes, listening to synthesized jazz, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. Department of Revenue. Agent Miller speaking. "Hi," I said. My voice was tight. "I received a notice for a business called Patterson Event Concepts. I think there is a mistake. I do not own this business. Can you verify your social security number?" Agent Miller asked. I gave it to him. I heard him typing. "Okay, Ms. Patterson, I see the account here. It was incorporated in 2019. You are listed as the secretary and treasurer. Your father, Clay Patterson, is the president. 2019. I whispered. I tried to think back. 2019. I was 26. I was living at home. Dad had been talking about doing some consulting work. He had brought me a stack of papers one night while I was studying for a midterm. Just standard liability stuff. Nat, so if I trip over a cable at a gig, we do not lose the house, need a second signature for the LLC. You are the organized one, right? I had signed them. I had signed them between bites of leftover lasagna, barely reading the text, because I trusted him. I signed paperwork for liability insurance. I told the agent not to be the treasurer of a company. Well, the filing with the Secretary of State lists you as an officer. Agent Miller said, and this business has been collecting sales tax on invoices for 3 years and not remitting it to the state. Collecting sales tax? I asked. On what? Event coordination services, the agent said. Venue rentals, catering markups. We have records of invoices sent to local vendors. They paid the tax to your company. Your company kept it. That is theft. Ms. Patterson. And since you are the treasurer, you are personally liable for the unpaid tax. I felt the room tilt. They were not just throwing parties. They were charging people for them. Can you send me the records? I asked. I need to see everything. I can mail you a transcript, he said. Do it, I said. When the transcript arrived 3 days later, it was a map of my exploitation. I spread the papers out on my bed. There were invoices for the Patterson Annual Super Bowl Bash. They had charged a local car dealership $500 for a gold sponsorship. They had charged a real estate agency $200 to have their logo on the napkins. They had charged the neighbors a co-op fee for the block party permits. It was a grift. My parents had turned their social life into a revenue stream, collecting money to fund their lifestyle under the guise of community events, and they had used my name to legitimize it. I looked at the dates. The most recent invoice was dated 3 weeks ago, the graduation party. They had sold sponsorships for the party they threw while I was graduating alone. I felt a surge of nausea. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved into the sink. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, but I also looked furious. I went back to the bedroom and opened my laptop. I had been avoiding social media, but now I needed to know what the narrative was. I logged into an old burner account I had made years ago to enter a contest. I went to Clay's profile. It was public. Of course, the most recent post was a photo of him and Marlene sitting on their porch. Looking somber, Marlene was wearing sunglasses. Clay Patterson posted, "It is hard when you give your children everything, roots and wings, and they choose to fly away and burn the nest behind them. We are heartbroken by Natalie's sudden departure and the lies she is spreading. We are praying for her mental health. Parenting is a thankless job, but we make the sacrifices anyway. Hashtag family first, hashtag pray for Natalie, hashtag mental health awareness." The comments were a cesspool of sympathy. "So sorry to hear this. Clay, she always seemed so quiet. Praying for you both. Kids these days are so entitled. If you need anything, Marlene, let us know." I clicked on Marlene's profile. She had been busy too. She had tagged 3 of my high school friends in a post about memory loss and delusions. Marlene Patterson. Does anyone remember if Natalie had that concussion in 10th grade? Trying to piece together some medical history for her doctors. We are so worried. She was seeding the ground. She was painting me as unstable, manic, perhaps medically compromised. If I tried to expose the fraud, they would say it was a paranoid delusion. Poor Natalie. She thinks we stole her money. She has been off her meds. It was brilliant. It was evil. I closed the laptop. I could not fight this from Brighton Harbor. I could not fight this with phone calls to tax agents. I needed the physical proof. I needed the original papers I had signed. I needed the bank records that used to come to the house before they went digital. I had a plastic file box in the hall closet. It had my birth certificate, my social security card, and copies of every document I had ever signed for them. I had kept it there because I thought it was safe. I had to go back. I waited until Friday. I told Dana I had a family emergency. She looked at me, saw the set of my jaw, and simply said, "Take Monday too." I told Dr. Aris. She warned me against it. "Do not engage," she said. "If you go back, you are walking into the lion's den." "I am not going to engage." I said, "I am going on a retrieval mission." I rented a car. I did not want to take the bus and be stranded. I wanted a vehicle I controlled. I drove the 5 hours south to Westbridge Hills. The landscape changed from the gritty coast to the rolling, manicured hills of my hometown. My stomach tightened with every mile. I booked a room at a motel 2 towns over. I did not want to be seen. I waited until Saturday afternoon. I knew their schedule. Saturday afternoon was errands. Clay went to the hardware store. Marlene went to the salon. The house would be empty between 1 and 3. I parked the rental car a block away, behind a hedge. I walked to the house. It looked the same. The grass was perfectly cut. The wreath on the door was seasonal, tulips for spring. I walked up the driveway, my heart thundering in my ears. I reached for my key ring. I still had my house key. I slid it into the lock. It turned. I almost cried with relief. They had not changed the exterior locks, probably because keys cost money. I stepped inside. The smell hit me instantly. Vanilla candles and lemon pledge. It smelled like a lie. I did not take off my shoes. I moved quickly. The house was silent. I went straight to the hall closet. This was where we kept the board games, the winter coats, and my file box. I reached for the knob. It was locked. This was a standard interior door. It had never had a lock before. I looked closely. The knob was new, shinier than the others. A keypad lock. I stared at it. They had locked the coat closet. Who puts a digital lock on a coat closet? People who are hiding something. I tried the code for the garage door. 1985. Red light. I tried my birthday. 0512. Red light. I tried the last 4 digits of my social security number. Red light. Natalie? I spun around. Brooke was standing at the top of the stairs. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair wet. She had not gone out with them. I froze. Brooke. She came down the stairs slowly, her eyes wide. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "Dad said you were in a cult. He said you joined a cult in Oregon. I am not in a cult." "Brooke," I said, "I am living 2 states away and working in logistics. I came for my things." She looked at the closet door, then back at me. Her hands were shaking. She tucked them into the pockets of her robe. "You can't be here," she said. "If they come home. Nat, You have to go. Dad he is really angry. He speaks about you like you are dead. I need my file box. I said, why is there a lock on the closet? Brooke swallowed hard. Mom said it was for organization, to keep the cleaning lady out. We don't have a cleaning lady, I said. Brooke looked away. She looked small. For the first time, I realized that Brooke was a hostage too, a pampered, favored hostage, but a hostage nonetheless. She was terrified of losing her status. Open it. Brooke, I said, do you know the code? I don't, she said quickly. I swear, only Dad knows it. She was lying. I could tell by the way she picked at her cuticles. Brooke, I said, stepping closer, I know about the credit cards. I know about the business. I know they are using your name too, or they will be soon. If you don't help me, you are going down with the ship when the state auditors come. She flinched. Auditors? The business is illegal. Brooke, it's tax fraud. Do you want to go to prison for a Super Bowl party? Her lip trembled. Tears spilled over. He will kill me, she whispered. He won't know. I said, just tell me the code. She looked at the front door, terrified. It's the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, she whispered. 2018. I turned to the lock. 2018. The mechanism clicked. I opened the door. The closet was empty. My file box was gone. The winter coats were gone. The board games were gone. The shelves were bare except for a single. Lonely umbrella. Where is it? I asked. The rage was back. Cold and sharp. Brooke was crying now. Silent. Shaking sobs. They moved everything. She said, after you left, Dad said we had to purge the house of negative energy. He rented a unit. Where? I don't know. He didn't tell me. I looked at her. She was useless. She was a child in a woman's body, paralyzed by the fear of losing the approval of two narcissists. I walked past her into the kitchen. I needed to think. If Clay rented a unit, where would he keep the key? He was a creature of habit. He kept his keys in the ceramic bowl by the coffee maker. I walked to the bowl. It was full of screws, rubber bands, and old receipts. I dug through it. There were 3 keys, one for the shed, one for the Toyota, and one small, silver key with a yellow plastic tag. I picked it up. The tag had a logo. You store at Westbridge, and a unit number written in Sharpie, B42. I knew where that was. It was the facility behind the liquor store where they bought the wine for the parties. I did not take the key. If I took the key, he would know I had been there. He would move the stuff again. I pulled out my phone. I took a high-resolution photo of the key, capturing the jagged teeth and the unit number. Then I took a photo of the back of the key, just in case. I dropped the key back into the bowl. I turned to Brooke. She was standing in the doorway, hugging herself. You didn't see me, I said. She nodded frantically. I didn't see you. Please just go. If you tell them I was here, I said, my voice low. I will tell the IRS that you were the assistant treasurer. It was a bluff, but it worked. She went pale. I walked out the front door. I got into my rental car and drove away before my hands started to shake. I did not go to the storage unit. I could not open it without the physical key. And I did not have bolt cutters. I needed a legal way in. I drove to a diner on the edge of town. I opened my laptop and searched for Legal Aid Westbridge Hills. One name came up with 5 stars and a review that said, "She eats bullies for breakfast. Sloan Mercer." Her office was in a strip mall, next to a dry cleaner. It was Saturday, but the website said, "By appointment only, urgent consults available." I called the number, Mercer Law. A voice answered. It was deep, raspy, smoke-cured. I need an urgent consult. I said, my parents are using my identity for a shell company and I just found the tax notices. Can you be here in 20 minutes? The voice asked. I was there in 10. Sloan Mercer was a woman in her 50s with short, spiky white hair and a leather jacket over a silk blouse. Her office smelled like old books and peppermint tea. She listened to me for 40 minutes without interrupting. She looked at the tax notice. She looked at the credit report. She looked at the photo of the storage key. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and took off her reading glasses. "Okay, Natalie," she said, "here is the reality. You're in a lot of trouble." "I know." I said, "No, I do not think you do," she said. "This isn't just about bad credit. If your name is on the Secretary of State filings, you are the corporate officer. You are liable for the taxes, the debts, and the fraud. If they took deposits for events they didn't host, or if they commingled funds, that is embezzlement. You could be looking at felony charges if the state decides to make an example of you." I felt the blood drain from my face, but I didn't know. I said, "Ignorance is not a defense in tax court." Sloane said sharply, "It is a mitigating factor, but not a shield." She leaned forward, her eyes hard. "We have to go on the offensive. We cannot wait for them to apologize. We have to separate you from this entity immediately. We need to file an affidavit of identity theft. We need to resign you from the corporation formally, and we need to get those records from that storage unit before they shred them." "How?" I asked. "I can't get in." "We sue them," Sloane said. "We file a civil suit for identity fraud, and we get a court order to preserve evidence. That freezes the storage unit." "Sue my parents?" I asked. The words felt heavy. Impossible. Sloane looked at me with a softness I hadn't expected. "Honey," she said, "they have already sued you. They just didn't file the paperwork. They convicted you the day you turned 18, and they decided your future belonged to them. You are just filing the appeal." I looked at her. I thought about the graduation ceremony, the empty seats, the banner, Patterson family tradition. The tradition was using me. "Do it," I said. Sloane nodded and pulled a fresh legal pad toward her. "Okay," she said. "Let's burn it down. But first, you need to go back to Brighton Harbor. Do not stay in this town tonight. If they see you, they will spook. We need the element of surprise." I stood up. I felt lighter than I had in years. I was terrified. Yes, but for the first time, I wasn't just taking the hits. I was hitting back. I drove out of Westbridge Hills as the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple. I watched my hometown disappear in the rearview mirror. I was not the daughter who stayed anymore. I was the witness who got away. And I was coming back with a subpoena. My apartment in Brighton Harbor had ceased to be a home. It had become an evidence locker. The cheap laminate table I used for meals was now buried under stacks of paper, credit card statements, tax transcripts, screenshots of my father's Facebook posts, and the utility bills for the warehouse on Industrial Way. I sat in the center of it all, a highlighter in my hand, cross-referencing dates. It was a Tuesday night. The rain was lashing against the basement window, a rhythmic drumming that usually soothed me, but tonight it sounded like a clock ticking. I had spent the last 3 nights building the timeline. Dana had introduced me to a man in the corporate compliance department named Robert, a forensic accountant who usually hunted down embezzlement in shipping manifestos. He had given me a template. "Treat your life like a crime scene." Robert had told me over coffee in the break room. "Remove the emotion. The numbers do not care if your father held your hand when you were 5. The numbers only care where the decimal point is." So I removed the emotion. I looked at the spreadsheet. October 12th, 2019. Event: Patterson Fall Mixer. Deposit: $2,000 paid to Party City Rentals. Source of funds: Natalie Patterson. Chase Sapphire preferred. Reimbursement to Natalie: 0. January 15th, 2020. Event: Super Bowl prep. Deposit: $1,500 paid to Elite Catering. Source of funds: Natalie Patterson. Capital One Venture. Reimbursement to Natalie: 0. I highlighted the lines. Yellow for credit card theft, pink for tax liability. The worst part was not the total. The total was staggering, nearly $45,000 over 4 years. But it was just money. I could earn money. I could file bankruptcy if I had to. The worst part was the dates. I looked at an entry from 2 years ago, June 3rd. That was the day I had emergency dental surgery. I had called my mother, crying, because the copay was $400 and I did not have it. She had told me they were tight that month, that I needed to be more responsible with my savings. On June 4th, the very next day, there was a charge on my card for $600 at a high-end wine merchant. Cases of Pinot Noir for summer solstice party. They had the money. They just did not have it for me. They had my credit limit, and they used it to buy wine while I sat in my apartment with a swollen jaw, eating instant mashed potatoes because I could not afford antibiotics. The casualness of it stopped my breath. They did not steal from me because they were desperate. They stole from me because they did not think I was a person who needed things. To them, I was just a utility. I was the electricity in the walls. You do not ask the outlet for permission to plug in the TV. You just do it. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Sloan Mercer. Subject: Cease and desist. Sent, Natalie. The letters have been sent via certified mail to your parents' home address and the business address. They require a signature. Once they sign, they are on notice. If they continue to use your name, it is willful identity fraud. Prepare yourself. Narcissists do not like boundaries. I stared at the screen. It was done. The first shot had been fired. I went to work the next day feeling brittle. I jumped when the phone rang. I flinched when the delivery driver dropped a heavy box. Dana stopped by my desk at 10. She placed a cup of herbal tea on my coaster. "You look like you are waiting for a bomb to go off," she said. "I am." I said. "Good." She said. "That means you are alert. Robert looked at your preliminary file. He said it is one of the cleanest documentation trails he has ever seen. You are doing good work." "Natalie, thank you." I said. "Just remember," Dana said, leaning in, "when the bomb goes off, you do not run into the smoke. You stand back and let the dust settle. Do not engage with the debris. The bomb went off at 4 in the afternoon. My cell phone, which I had kept silent in my drawer, began to vibrate. It did not stop. It buzzed against the metal for 10 minutes straight. I waited until 5. I walked out to the parking lot, sat in my car, and unlocked the screen. 12 missed calls, all from Clay. There was one voicemail. I pressed play. I held the phone away from my ear, as if it could bite me. "Natalie?" My father's voice filled the car. It was not the screaming voice I had expected. It was worse. It was the warm, chuckle-laced voice he used when he was holding court at a barbecue. "Natalie, honey, we got this very strange letter today. From some lawyer? It is full of a lot of big words. Sweetheart, I think you are confused. Mom is sitting here crying because she thinks you have joined a cult or something. Who are these people putting ideas in your head? Strangers? You know you can't trust people who don't know our family history." He paused. I could hear the ice clinking in his glass. "Look, obviously there is a misunderstanding about the business paperwork. We set that up for your future. Nat, to build you an asset, and now you are threatening to sue us? For helping you? It hurts. Honey, it really hurts. Just come home. Come home this weekend and we will sit down like adults and clear this up. No lawyers, just family. We love you." The message ended. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel. For your future. He was rewriting history in real time. He was taking the theft and turning it into a favor. He was taking the exploitation and turning it into a legacy. And the scariest part was how smooth it sounded. If I played this for a stranger, they would hear a loving father confused by his daughter's erratic behavior. They would not hear the threat wrapped in the word strangers. They would not hear the command in "come home." I did not call back. I forwarded the voicemail to Sloan, added to the file. She replied 3 minutes later, "Do not respond." I went back to the apartment and dove deeper into the invoices. I needed to understand the mechanics of the grift, if I was going to dismantle it. I needed to know how the engine worked. I pulled up the folder labeled sponsorships. I had assumed the Patterson event concepts was just a way to write off their party expenses. But as I looked at the checks, I realized it was more sophisticated than that. There was a check for $500 from Miller's Auto Body. The memo line read, "Marketing fee." There was a check for $1,000 from Westbridge Real Estate Group. Memo, community outreach. There were dozens of these. Small businesses in Westbridge Hills. I cross-referenced the dates with the parties. The Super Bowl party wasn't just a party, it was a networking event. My parents invited the local business owners, the car dealer, the insurance agent, the real estate broker. They provided free food and alcohol, paid for by me. And in exchange, these business owners wrote checks to Patterson Event Concepts for marketing. Why? Because my father was on the zoning board. I froze. I had forgotten. Clay had been elected to the volunteer zoning board 4 years ago. It was a minor position, unpaid, but in a small town like Westbridge Hills, the zoning board decided who got to put up a new sign, who got to expand their parking lot, who got a variance for a patio. These were not sponsorships. These were kickbacks. My parents were selling access to Clay's influence, disguising it as an event planning fee, funneling the money into a shell company in my name, and using my credit to pay for the overhead. If this came out, it wasn't just tax fraud, it was corruption. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. This was radioactive. If I exposed this, I wasn't just embarrassing them, I was destroying them. My phone rang again. It was late, 11 at night. It was Brooke. I stared at the screen. I had not unblocked her. But I must have missed one of her numbers. This was her work cell. I answered. "What do you want?" I asked. She was crying. Not the fake, sniffly crying she used to get out of speeding tickets. This was the hyperventilating, jagged sobbing of someone who has lost control. "Nat," she gasped. "Nat, you have to stop." "Stop what?" I asked. "The letter," she said. He is tearing the house apart. He threw the toaster through the kitchen window. He is screaming that he is going to ruin you. He says he is going to call your boss and tell them you are a thief. Let him try." I said, "My boss knows everything. He is talking about the gala." Brooke sobbed. "He says if you don't drop this, he is going to announce at the gala that you embezzled the family savings and ran away." I went still. "The gala? What gala?" I asked. "The Community Leadership Gala." Brooke said, "Next Saturday. Dad and Mom are being honored as Citizens of the Year. For the events." I laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "Of course they were." "Brooke, listen to me." I said, "I know about the zoning board. I know about the kickbacks. I know the money from the car dealership wasn't for marketing." The line went silent. The sobbing stopped. "You know?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "and I have the bank records to prove it." "Oh my God," Brooke whispered. "If that comes out—" I signed some of those checks. "Nat, Dad told me to deposit them. He said it was easier if I did it because I was going past the bank." I closed my eyes. They had used her too. They had made her the bag man. "Brooke," I said, "you are an accomplice." "I didn't know," she wailed. "I just wanted them to be happy. You know how they are. If you say no, they freeze you out." I couldn't handle the silence. "Nat, I'm not strong like you. I am not strong." I thought, "I am just tired. I can help you." I said, "But you have to give me something, anything." She said, "Just don't let me go to jail. I need the storage unit." I said, "I need to see what is in there before Sloan files the lawsuit. I need to know what they are hiding." "I can't." She said, "Dad has the key." "I know he has the key." I said, "But you are the golden child. Brooke, you can get it. He keeps it in his safe now." She said, "But I know the combination. Get the key." I said, "Meet me there." "When?" "Tomorrow night." I said, "I am flying in. Nat, if he catches us." "If he catches us," I said, "I will take the heat. I always do. But if you don't meet me, Brooke, I am handing your name to the forensic accountant on Monday morning." "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, midnight. Tomorrow." I hung up. My hand was shaking. I booked a flight for the next morning. I told Dana I had to go back. She looked at me for a long time. "Do not go alone," she said. "I have to." I said, "My sister is the leak. I can't spook her with a stranger." Dana reached into her desk and pulled out a small, gray device. "It is a digital recorder," she said. "Voice activated. Keep it in your pocket, in this state, and in that state. You can record a conversation if one party consents. You are the consenting party. Thank you, I said. I flew into the regional airport on Saturday afternoon. I rented a car, a different one this time, a dark sedan that blended into the night. I parked in a supermarket lot and waited. At 11:30, I drove to the storage facility behind the liquor store. It was a desolate place. Rows of orange metal doors under flickering sodium lights. A chain-link fence topped with barbed wire surrounded the perimeter. I parked in the shadow of the main office. I turned off the engine. At midnight exactly. Brooke's white convertible pulled up. It was too flashy for a covert meeting. She looked like a beacon in the darkness. She got out. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, even though it was pitch black. I got out and walked over to her. She looked terrified. She was shaking so hard her sunglasses were vibrating on her nose. "Did you bring it?" I asked. She nodded. She opened her hand. The silver key with the yellow tag lay on her palm. "Hurry," she whispered. "He thinks I am at Todd's apartment. If he calls and I don't answer, we will be quick," I said. We walked to Unit B42. I took the key. I slid it into the padlock. It turned with a heavy click. I rolled the metal door up. It rattled like a bag of bones. I turned on my flashlight. The unit was packed. It was not just household overflow. It was a shrine to their fraud. There were stacks of boxes labeled by year: 2019, 2020, 2021. I opened a box labeled Invoices/Sponsors. It was all there. Carbon copies of invoices sent to the town council, the Rotary Club, the local small businesses, consulting services, $1,200, event management, $800, and clipped to each invoice was a photocopy of the check and a handwritten note in Clay's jagged scrawl: zoning approval pending, make sure to thank Jim, permit expedited, send fruit basket. It was a ledger of bribery. I pulled out my phone and started snapping photos, page after page. "Nat, look at this," Brooke whispered. I turned. She was standing in the back of the unit, holding a rolled-up banner. She had unfurled it. It was a vinyl banner, heavy and expensive. Patterson Event Concepts, bringing community together, founded by Natalie Patterson. My name, huge, block letters. They had not just used me as a signatory, they had marketed me as the face. "Why?" I whispered. "Why put my name on the banner?" "Because," Brooke said, her voice trembling, "because you have a clean record. Dad can't be an officer of a company because of the bankruptcy in 2010. The court order said he couldn't manage financial assets for 10 years. I stared at the banner. He used me as a liability shield. If the business went down, if the fraud was discovered, it was my company, my name on the banner, my name on the bank account. He had set me up to be the fall guy from day one. "There is more," Brooke said. She pointed to a box in the corner. It was labeled Gala. I walked over and opened it. Inside were stacks of glossy programs. Westbridge Hills Community Leadership Gala, honoring Clay and Marlene Patterson. I picked up a program. I flipped to the centerfold. There was a bio of my parents. Clay and Marlene have dedicated their lives to service, supported by their daughters, Brooke and Natalie. Their family-run organization, Patterson Event Concepts, has raised over $100,000 for local initiatives, and underneath, a folder labeled Speech. I opened it. It was typed in large font, double-spaced. Draft 3. Acceptance Speech. I read the highlighted paragraph. "We want to take a moment to thank our daughter, Natalie. She is the shy one, the quiet force behind the scenes. She founded this company with her own savings because she believed in this town. She isn't here tonight because she is off expanding our mission in a new city. But we accept this award on her behalf. Natalie, this is for you." I felt the bile rise in my throat. He was going to pin it all on me publicly. He was going to stand on a stage, hold a trophy, and tell the entire town that I founded the company. So when the IRS came knocking, or when the zoning board got investigated, everyone in town would say, "Oh yes, Clay said it was Natalie's company. She started it with her savings." He was not just stealing my money, he was framing me. I looked at the date on the program. Saturday, May 12th. That was next Saturday. I looked at Brooke. She was reading over my shoulder, her face pale. "He is going to destroy you," she whispered. "He is going to make you the CEO of the crime." I took the speech. I folded it and put it in my pocket. I took the banner. "What are you doing?" Brooke hissed. "You can't take that. He will know. Let him know." I said. I grabbed the box of invoices. "Grab that box," I said to Brooke, pointing to the financial ledger. "I can't," she said. "Brooke," I said, grabbing her arm. "Do you want to be the sister who helped the hero? Or the sister who went to jail with the villains? Pick a side. Right now." She looked at me. She looked at the door. She grabbed the box. We loaded the trunk of my rental car. I worked in a frenzy. I took every piece of paper that had my name on it. I took the Credit Natalie folder that contained the full credit card numbers and the fake utility applications. When we were done, the unit looked ransacked. I locked the door. I gave the key back to Brooke. "Put it back in the safe," I said. "He will know." She said again, tears streaming down her face. "Tell him nothing," I said, "or tell him everything. It doesn't matter anymore." I got in my car. Brooke stood in the parking lot, looking like a lost child in a trench coat. "Go home." "Brooke," I said. I drove away. I did not go to the airport. I drove straight to a 24-hour copy center 2 towns over. I spent 3 hours scanning every single document onto a flash drive and emailing them to Sloan, Dana, and Robert. Then I drove to the airport and flew back to Brighton Harbor on the first flight out. I landed at 10 in the morning. I went straight to the office. I looked like a wreck. Same clothes, red eyes, hair in a messy bun. I walked into Dana's office and dropped the box of invoices on her desk. "It is worse than we thought," I said. Dana looked at the banner I was holding. "Founded by Natalie Patterson." She stood up. She touched the vinyl. "This is the evidence," she said. I pulled the speech out of my pocket. "And this," I said, placing it on the desk, "is the confession." Dana read the speech. Her expression hardened. "He is going to say this in public?" she asked. "In front of witnesses?" "Yes," I said. "Next Saturday." Dana looked at me. "Natalie," she said, "you have the documents. Sloan can file the injunction on Monday. We can stop the gala. We can send the police to his door before he even puts on his tuxedo." I shook my head. "No," I said. Dana frowned. "No? If we stop it now," I said, "he will spin it. He will say I'm jealous. He will say I am mentally ill and tried to sabotage his big night. He will play the victim. The town loves him. They won't believe the paperwork. They will believe the man they drink beer with." "Then what do you want to do?" Dana asked. "I want him to say it," I said. I looked at the speech. "Natalie, this is for you. I want him to stand on that stage." I said, "I want him to look the town in the eye and lie. I want him to commit the fraud in public, on camera." "And then?" Dana asked. "And then," I said, "I want to accept the award." Dana stared at me. A slow, terrifying smile spread across her face. "You are going to the gala," she said. "I am going to the gala," I said. She picked up her phone. "I will call Robert," she said. "We need to prepare a packet. If you are going to walk into that room, you are not walking in as a daughter. You are walking in as a whistleblower." I walked back to my desk. I sat down next to Mateo. He looked at my rumpled clothes and the dark circles under my eyes. He unscrewed his thermos and poured a cup of coffee. He slid it onto my desk. "Rough weekend?" he asked. "The roughest," I said. He nodded. He went back to his typing. I took a sip of the coffee. It was strong and bitter. I looked at the calendar on my monitor. Saturday, May 12th. I highlighted the date. I was not running anymore. I was not hiding in a sublet. I was not the girl who cried in her car. I was the founder, and I was going to the shareholder meeting. The plane ride back to Brighton Harbor felt less like an escape and more like a tactical retreat. I sat in seat 14B, staring at the gray fabric of the seat back in front of me, listening to the hum of the engines, my bag, tucked under the seat. contained a flash drive that could send my parents to prison. For 3 days, I did not leave my apartment. I sat on my new mattress, surrounded by the copies of the invoices I had liberated from the storage unit. I built the case file. I organized the evidence by charge: tax fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, forgery. But while my hands were busy with staples and paper clips, my mind was fighting a war on a different front. I debated the confrontation. Part of me, the part that was still the frightened daughter who just wanted to be good, wanted to send the file to Sloan, file the lawsuit quietly, and never speak to them again. I wanted to let the IRS be my voice. I wanted to hide behind the machinery of the state and let the auditors do the dirty work. But then I thought about the speech. Natalie, this is for you. I thought about the banner, founded by Natalie Patterson. They were not just stealing from me in secret anymore. They were dragging my likeness onto a stage. They were using my absence as a prop. If I sued them quietly, they would spin it. They would tell the town I was greedy. They would tell the neighbors I was mentally unstable and suing them for my inheritance early. They would cry at the country club, and the town would hand them tissues. I went to my therapy session on Wednesday evening. I sat in Dr. Aris's chair, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles were white. If I go, I said, I am walking into a trap. They want me there. They want the picture of the happy family. And if you do not go? Doctor, Aris asked. Then they give the speech anyway. I said, they accept the award in my name. They cement the lie. And when the indictment comes down 6 months from now, they will look like the victims of a vindictive daughter. Doctor, Aris nodded slowly. Natalie, she said, in families like yours, the narrative is the most valuable currency. Your parents are bankrupt financially, but they are rich in narrative. They control the story. How do I take it back? I asked. You stop letting them edit the script. She said, private confrontations are always rewritten. If you scream at your father in the kitchen, he will tell everyone you attacked him. If you cry to your mother on the phone, she will tell everyone you are hysterical. So I have to do it where they cannot edit it. I said, you have to do it where there are witnesses. Doctor, Aris said, but you must be careful. If you go there and scream, you validate their story that you are unstable. If you go there and cry, you validate their story that you are weak. Then what do? You be the one thing they cannot handle, she said. You be real. I left her office and drove straight to Sloan Mercer's satellite office in Brighton Harbor. We connected via video call with her partner in Westbridge Hills. I told Sloan the plan. I am going to the gala. I said. Sloan leaned into the camera, her face grim. It is high risk. Natalie, if you lose your temper, you lose your credibility. I will not lose my temper. I said, I want to issue a correction, a public correction. Sloan tapped her pen against her chin. Okay, she said. If you are going to do this, we treat it like a deposition. You are not a daughter confronting her parents. You are a CEO correcting a press release. You do not talk about your feelings. You do not talk about the graduation. You talk about the paperwork. A controlled public correction. I said, exactly. Sloan said, you bring the file. You hold it. It is your shield, and you keep it short. The moment you start explaining, you are losing. You state the facts, and you leave the stage. I can do that. I said, can you? Sloan asked gently. Clay Patterson is a master of the room. He will try to charm you, and if that fails, he will try to physically intimidate you. He will touch you. He will invade your space. Let him, I said. Thursday morning. The invitation arrived. It was not a paper invite. It was a forwarded email from the Westbridge Hills Chamber of Commerce, sent to me by a well-meaning neighbor I had not spoken to in 5 years. Subject: so happy to hear you are coming home. I opened the attachment. It was a digital flyer for the Community Leadership Gala. Honoring Our Pillars, Clay and Marlene Patterson. Special guest appearance by Natalie Patterson, founder of Patterson Event Concepts. My stomach dropped. They had already announced me. There was a link at the bottom to the Westbridge Gazette. I clicked it. The article was in the lifestyle section. The headline read, "A Patterson Family Reunion. Prodigal Daughter Returns to Celebrate Parents' Legacy." I read the first paragraph. In a heartwarming turn of events, Natalie Patterson is flying in from the coast to present the Citizen of the Year award to her parents, Clay and Marlene. "It has been a hard few months of transition," says Clay Patterson, "but family always finds its way back to the table. Natalie is coming home to make amends and honor the business we built together." Make amends. I sat at my desk at Harborgate, staring at the words. He was telling the town I was coming to apologize. He was setting the stage so that if I looked upset, it was just emotion. If I looked angry, it was passion. He had pre-insulated himself against anything I might say. I needed to call the organizer. I needed to warn them. I looked up the contact info for the gala. The coordinator was a woman named Mrs. Higgins. I knew her vaguely. She ran the high school booster club. I dialed the number. Westbridge Events. Mrs. Higgins speaking. "Hello, Mrs. Higgins." I said, "This is Natalie Patterson." "Oh, Natalie," she chirped. "We are so excited. Your mother told me you were flying in. We have a seat for you right at the head table. We were just finalizing the menu. Chicken or salmon?" "Mrs. Higgins," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I am calling because there is a misunderstanding. I did not agree to speak at this event, and I did not agree to be listed as a founder of Patterson Event Concepts." There was a pause. "Oh, honey," Mrs. Higgins laughed. "Your dad said you might get a little stage fright. Don't worry. It's just friends and neighbors. You don't have to give a long speech. Just a few words of thanks. Mrs. Higgins, please listen to me." I said, "I am not calling about stage fright. I am calling because my name is being used without my consent. That company is under investigation for tax fraud. I have filed a police report regarding identity theft. You need to remove my name from the program." The line went silent. Then, Mrs. Higgins's voice changed. It became the voice of a woman who did not want her party ruined. "Natalie," she said sharply, "this is a charity gala. We have sold 300 tickets. The programs are already printed. I really do not think this is the time for family drama." "It is not drama," I said. "It is a legal issue." "Look," she said, "whatever spat you are having with Clay, settle it at home. Do not bring it to the ballroom. We are keeping things positive tonight. This is about community. Just come, have some wine, and smile for the camera. Your parents have worked very hard for this." She hung up. I held the phone in my hand. Just smile for the camera. That was the Westbridge Hills way. If it looked good, it was good. If you raised your hand to point out the rot. You were the one causing the problem. I looked up. Dana Wu was standing at my cubicle. She had heard the whole thing. She didn't listen. "Did she?" Dana asked. "No," I said. "She told me to keep it positive." Dana crossed her arms. "Well," she said, "I suppose we will have to make it impossible for them to ignore the negative." "We?" I asked. "I am coming with you," Dana said. "You don't have to do that." I said, "It is a 5-hour flight. I have some vacation days." She said, "And frankly, I want to see this. I am your employer. Natalie, if you are going to stand up and claim identity theft, it helps to have a credible witness who can verify that you have been working in my office, not running a shell company in Westbridge." I felt a lump in my throat. "Thank you," I said. Mateo rolled his chair over. "You need to practice," he said. "Practice what?" "Being a rock," he said. He picked up a stapler and held it like a microphone. "I am your dad. I am going to say things to trigger you. You have to answer without emotion." "Okay," I said. He leaned in, making his face goofy and menacing. "Natalie, how could you be so ungrateful? After all we sacrificed for you." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I wanted to scream. I sacrificed everything. I took a breath. I looked at the stapler. "I am not ungrateful." I said, "I am unincorporated." Mateo shook his head. "Too witty. Less emotion." "Try again." "Natalie, you are ruining the family name. The family name is attached to fraudulent invoices." I said. "Better," Mateo said. "But colder." Be a robot. Be a fax machine. Natalie, you are breaking your mother's heart. I paused. That was the one that always got me. My mother's heart is not on the agenda. I said flatly, the agenda is the financial liability of Patterson Event Concepts. Mateo nodded. That is the one. Keep saying that. Friday night, I received a text from Brooke. Mom is sick with stress. She's been throwing up all day. She can't stop crying. Dad says if she has a heart attack, it is on you. I looked at the phone. I was in the hotel room in Westbridge Hills. Dana was in the room next door. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. The image of my mother, frail and weeping, clutching her chest. It was the weapon they had used for 30 years. Don't upset your mother. She is fragile. I typed a response. If she is having a medical emergency, you should call 911. I deleted it. I typed another one. I am sorry she is not feeling well. I deleted that too. I put the phone down. I did not reply. Silence was the only boundary they respected, because silence was the only thing they couldn't manipulate. Saturday evening arrived with a heavy, humid heat. I did not wear the graduation dress. That dress belonged to a girl who wanted to be liked. I wore a suit. It was a dark navy, tailored and sharp, that I had bought with my second paycheck from Harborgate. I wore heels that were high enough to give me height, but thick enough to stand my ground. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. Dana met me in the lobby. She was wearing a gray blazer and holding a sleek leather portfolio. Ready? She asked. I touched the manila folder in my bag. It contained the cease and desist, the police report number, the affidavit of forgery, and the photos of the banner. Ready, I said. We drove to the country club. The parking lot was full of luxury SUVs and sedans. I saw the banner hanging over the entrance. Celebrating excellence, the Patterson legacy. It made me want to laugh. It was so absurd. We walked in. The lobby was crowded with people holding champagne flutes. The air smelled of expensive perfume and roast beef. We did not check in at the welcome table. I did not want a name tag. We walked straight to the back of the ballroom. The lights were dimmed. The tables were set with white linens and gold centerpieces. I saw them immediately. They were on the stage. The room was still filling up. But the honorees were doing a sound check. Clay was wearing a tuxedo that looked slightly too tight. He was laughing with the sound guy, pointing at the microphone, owning the space. He looked powerful. He looked like the man everyone in this town thought he was. Marlene was wearing a red sequined gown, the same color as the family tradition sweaters. She was fixing her hair in a small compact mirror, tilting her head to catch the light. They looked happy. They looked successful. They looked like they hadn't a care in the world. Then, Clay looked up. He saw me standing by the double doors. His smile didn't drop. It froze. It became a rictus of teeth. He nudged Marlene. She looked up. She saw me. For a second, I saw the panic in her eyes, the real, raw fear of a woman whose house of cards was trembling. But then, the training kicked in. She pasted a wide, watery smile on her face. She practically ran down the stairs from the stage, her sequins shimmering. "Natalie!" she cried out. Her voice carried across the room. Heads turned. She rushed toward me, arms open wide. She was going for the hug, the reunion hug, the photo op. I stood still. I did not raise my arms. When she got close enough to smell her perfume, gardenias and gin, I took one small step back and held up a hand. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice was not loud, but it was clear. Marlene faltered. She stopped a foot away from me, her arms still half raised. "Natalie," she hissed through her smile. "Everyone is watching. Don't be a brat. Give me a hug." I kept my hand up. "I am not here to hug you. Mom, I am here to collect the documents you stole." Marlene's eyes darted around the room. People were watching. They were smiling, thinking it was an emotional moment. They couldn't hear the words. "Just come sit down," she whispered frantically. "We saved you a seat. We can talk later. Daddy has a surprise for you in the speech." "I know about the speech." I said, "I have a copy." Marlene went pale. Clay was walking toward us now. He moved with a heavy, purposeful stride. "There she is," he boomed, clapping his hands. "The prodigal daughter." He reached for my shoulder, a heavy, claiming hand. I sidestepped. "Hello? Clay?" I said. He blinked. I had never called him Clay. "Natalie," he said, his voice dropping to a menacing growl that only I could hear. "Get in line. Now. You are making a scene. I am not making a scene." I said, "I am making an appearance. Isn't that what you wanted?" He glared at me. His eyes were cold, flat stones. "You ruined this for me," he whispered, "and I will bury you. I will tell them you stole the money. I will tell them you are an addict. I have the story written. Nat. Don't make me publish it." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had terrified me for 30 years, and I realized he was small. He was a small man in a rented tuxedo, terrified of a folder of paper. "Go to the stage." "Clay," I said, "get your award." He stared at me, trying to read my play, but I gave him nothing. No tears, no anger, just the gray rock. He sniffed. He adjusted his cufflinks. "Fine," he said. "Sit down. And smile." He grabbed Marlene's arm, hard, and steered her back toward the head table. I did not sit at the head table. I sat at a table near the back, with Dana. The gala began. People ate salads. The mayor gave a speech about community spirit. The high school jazz band played. I sat with my hands folded on the table. Dana checked her phone. "Sloan says the server is ready to file the injunction Monday morning." Dana whispered, "But this is better." The main event started at 8 o'clock. Mrs. Higgins took the podium. "And now," she chirped, "the moment we have all been waiting for. Please welcome our Citizens of the Year, the dynamic duo behind Patterson Event Concepts, Clay and Marlene Patterson." The room erupted in applause. People stood up. Clay and Marlene walked onto the stage. They waved. They held hands. They looked like royalty. Clay took the microphone. Thank you," he said, wiping a fake tear from his eye. This means the world to us. When we started this journey, we just wanted to give back to the town that gave us so much." He paused for effect. "But we didn't do it alone. No one builds a legacy alone. We stand on the shoulders of our family." He looked out into the crowd. He scanned the room until he found me in the back. "And tonight, we have a very special surprise. Our daughter, Natalie, the founder of Patterson Event Concepts, has come home to celebrate with us. Natalie, come on up here." The spotlight swung around. It hit me. I was blinded by the white light. The room cheered. "Natalie! Natalie!" This was the trap. If I refused to go up, I looked like a petulant child. If I went up, I was part of the show. I stood up. I picked up my folder. I walked toward the stage. The applause grew louder. I saw Brooke sitting at the head table. She had her hands over her mouth. She looked terrified. I walked up the stairs. Clay was beaming. He reached out his hand to pull me into the circle of success. "Come here, sweetheart," he said into the mic. He reached for my elbow. He wanted to guide me to the side, to have me stand there like a prop while he finished his speech. I stepped out of his reach. I walked past him. I walked straight to the podium. Clay looked confused. He hadn't expected me to take the mic. He tried to step in front of me. "Nat," he said, off mic, "what are you doing?" I stepped around him. I gripped the sides of the podium. The room went quiet. They were expecting a thank you. They were expecting tears. I leaned into the microphone. My voice did not shake. "Good evening," I said. The silence was absolute. "My name is Natalie Patterson," I said. I looked at Clay. He was staring at me, his face draining of color. He made a move to grab the mic, but I leaned closer. "I am here tonight to clarify a few points regarding the company known as Patterson Event Concepts," I said. I opened my folder. I took out a piece of paper. "I did not found this company." I said clearly, "I did not incorporate this company. I have never been an employee of this company." A murmur rippled through the room. The banner hanging above the door says, "Founded by Natalie Patterson." I continued, That is a lie. My name was placed on corporate filings without my knowledge or consent. Clay lunged. He grabbed my arm. That's enough, he hissed. She's not feeling well. She's having an episode. I pulled my arm away. I turned to look at him, still speaking into the mic. I am not having an episode. Clay, I am having an audit. I turned back to the crowd. I saw the faces of the business owners, the car dealer, the realtor. They looked confused. They looked worried. For the past 4 years, I said, invoices have been sent to many of you in this room under my name. Credit accounts have been opened in my name to fund these events. Tax filings have been submitted in my name. I held up the folder. I have filed a formal report of identity theft with the Westbridge Police Department as of this morning. I said, I have also filed an affidavit of forgery with the Secretary of State. I looked at Mrs. Higgins, who was standing by the side of the stage, her mouth open in horror. I informed the organizers of this fraud yesterday. I said, I offered to handle this privately by simply removing my name from the program. I was told to keep it positive. I looked out at the room. There is nothing positive about theft. I said, I closed the folder. I am not a founder. I said, I am a victim of financial abuse, and effective immediately. I am separating my identity from this business and this family. I looked at Clay one last time. He was frozen. He looked like a statue that was beginning to crack. Enjoy your award, I said. I stepped away from the podium. I signaled to Mrs. Higgins, who was clutching her clipboard like a shield. I have the documentation here if you need it for your records. I said, then. I walked down the stairs. The room was silent. No one clapped. No one moved. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of my heels clicking on the parquet floor as I walked back to my table. The silence in the ballroom was not empty. It was heavy. It pressed against my eardrums like deep water. 300 people. The mayor, the school board, the business owners who had sponsored my parents' lifestyle, sat frozen, their forks hovering halfway to their mouths. I walked back to my table. My heels on the parquet floor sounded like gunshots. Click, click, click. I reached my seat and sat down. I picked up my napkin and placed it in my lap. My hands were trembling, but only I could feel it. To the room. I was a statue, on stage. Clay Patterson was trying to restart a heart that had already stopped beating. He laughed, a nervous, barking sound that echoed too loudly in the quiet room. Folks! Folks! He shouted, gripping the podium until his knuckles turned white. He waved a hand toward me, a gesture meant to be dismissive, but looking more like a spasm. You have to forgive our daughter. She has been under a tremendous amount of stress lately, moving to a new city, a new job. Sometimes the pressure gets to be too much, right? We all have those moments where we get a little confused about the details. He looked at Marlene. She was standing frozen next to him, her smile fixed in a terrifying rictus of panic. It is just a family misunderstanding. Clay boomed, sweating visibly under the stage lights. We will sort out the paperwork at home. You know how it is. Kids and their imaginations. Let's get back to the celebration. Who is ready for the raffle? He was good. I had to give him that. He was trying to pivot the entire room's attention with sheer force of will. A few people chuckled nervously. The tension began to dissipate. Just a fraction. I could not let it dissipate. I stood up again at my table. I did not walk to the stage this time. I simply turned to face him from across the room. Clay, I said. My voice projected clearly without a microphone. He froze. The room went dead silent again. If it is a misunderstanding, I asked, then why was a credit card in my name used to pay the deposit for this venue 3 days after I moved out of state? Clay's mouth opened, then closed. I left on Sunday. I continued. I took my physical cards with me. Yet on Tuesday, a charge was manually entered for $2,000 to the Westbridge Country Club. The IP address for that transaction traces back to the house on Oak Street. I paused. If I was confused, Clay, how did I charge a card from 500 miles away? The question hung in the air. It was a math problem that his charm could not solve. Clay's face turned a mottled red. Natalie, Sit down, he snapped, the loving father mask slipping to reveal the bully underneath. You are embarrassing yourself. You don't know what you are talking about. You don't even have a job. You are drifting. Dana Wu stood up. She did not stand up quickly. She rose with the slow, terrifying grace of a corporate executioner. She smoothed her blazer. She adjusted her glasses. Actually, Dana said, her voice cool and professional. Natalie has a job. She works for me. She turned to the room. My name is Dana Wu. I am the Director of Operations for Harbor Gate Transit Solutions. Natalie Patterson is a valued member of my team. She handles complex logistics and compliance for interstate freight. She is not confused, and she is certainly not drifting. Dana looked at Clay. In fact, she continued, Natalie has spent the last week working with our corporate forensic accounting department to document a series of unauthorized transactions linked to her identity. I am here tonight as her employer to verify that she was in Brighton Harbor working at her desk when these checks were signed in Westbridge Hills. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the space. Clay looked at Dana. He had no defense for her. He could bully a daughter. He could not bully a director of operations in a tailored suit. This is ridiculous, Clay sputtered. Who brings their boss to a party? This is a private family matter. Mrs. Higgins, the organizer, bustled forward. She looked like she was about to faint. Okay, she squeaked. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Let's all just take a breath. The servers are bringing out the dessert. It is a lovely tiramisu. Let's focus on the sweetness. She signaled the band to play. The drummer raised his sticks. Excuse me. A voice cut through the room. It came from the front table, the VIP table. Mr. Henderson, the owner of the largest car dealership in the county, stood up. He was a big man, red-faced and serious. He was holding the gala program in one hand and his phone in the other. Clay, Mr. Henderson said. His voice was not friendly. Clay's smile trembled. Jim, great to see you. Enjoying the night? I am looking at my accounting software. Mr. Henderson said. He tapped his phone screen. I wrote a check for $5,000 last month to Patterson Event Concepts. The invoice said, Marketing and Community Outreach. That is right, Clay said, sweating profusely. And look at the outreach. Look at this crowd. Mr. Henderson looked at me. But the invoice says to make the check payable to the company, he said. And the W-9 form you sent me lists Natalie Patterson as the sole proprietor. He held up the phone. If Natalie did not authorize that. Mr. Henderson said slowly. Then who cashed my check? The question landed like a grenade. This was not a family squabble anymore. This was business. This was $5,000 of a local tycoon's money. Clay wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Jim, come on. It is a family business. It all goes into the same pot. We use it to facilitate the zoning issues you were having. You know how it works. Mr. Henderson went purple. Are you saying I paid a bribe? He roared. No. Clay waved his hands frantically. I am saying we consulted. We consulted on the project. Mr. Henderson turned to the other business owners at his table. Did you guys get invoices from Natalie? He asked. A woman from the real estate agency nodded slowly. I did. $2,000. For the Spring Fling sponsorship, and me, said the owner of the hardware store. A murmur started. It grew into a rumble. People were pulling out their phones. They were checking their banking apps. The Community Leadership Gala was dissolving into a real-time audit. Marlene stepped forward. She grabbed the microphone from Clay. Her hands were shaking so hard the mic rattled against her rings. Stop it, she screamed. Her voice was shrill, piercing the rumble. Just stop it! She pointed a shaking finger at me. This is all her fault, Marlene shrieked. She always overreacts. She is dramatic and selfish. She looked at the crowd, her eyes wild. We only used her name because she has good credit. She wasn't using it. She was just sitting on it. We needed the liquidity to keep the events going, to keep the community happy. We assumed she wouldn't mind because she never minds. She never fights back. The room went deadly silent again. She never fights back. Marlene clamped her hand over her mouth, realizing too late what she had said. She had admitted it. She had admitted that my compliance was the foundation of their business model. They had banked on my silence. They had bet their entire future on the fact that I would be too afraid to make a scene. I looked at her. I felt a strange, cold pity. I am fighting back now. "Mom," I said softly. Clay turned on Brooke. He needed a scapegoat. He needed someone to blame for the mechanics of the failure. "Brooke," he barked, "you said you handled the mail. You said you changed the address so she wouldn't see the statements. How did she get the statements?" Brooke was sitting at the head table, staring into her water glass. She looked small. She looked like she wanted to disappear. I froze. I knew Brooke was involved. I knew she had signed checks. But hearing it out loud, that she had actively diverted my mail to hide the theft, felt like a knife twisting in a wound I thought had already closed. "Brooke?" I asked. Brooke looked up. Her face was streaked with mascara. "I had to," she cried out, her voice breaking. "Dad told me it was temporary. He said they just needed to float the deposit for the Super Bowl party, and then they would pay it back before you noticed." She looked at me, pleading. "He said you would say no because you are stingy." Brooke sobbed. "He said we had to protect the family image. I didn't want to. Nat. But he made me call the bank. He stood over me while I typed in your password." I looked at Clay. He was not looking at Brooke. He was looking at the exit, calculating his odds. "You helped them steal from me." I said to Brooke, "You helped them gaslight me on graduation day. You knew why the credit card was maxed out. And you still let me pay for dinner that night." Brooke put her head in her hands and wailed. The organizer, Mrs. Higgins, was now frantically waving at a security guard by the door. "Okay, that is enough," Mrs. Higgins shouted. "This is a celebration. We are not doing this." I picked up the sealed manila envelope from the table. I walked over to Mrs. Higgins. She flinched, as if I were going to hit her. I held out the envelope. "I am not here to humiliate anyone," I said. My voice was steady. "I am not here to cause a scene. I am here to separate myself." Mrs. Higgins looked at the envelope. "What is this?" "This is a copy of the police report filed this morning." I said, "Along with the affidavit of forgery and a cease and desist order regarding the use of the name Patterson Event Concepts." I placed it in her hands. "If you continue to distribute programs with my name on them," I said, "you will be named as a co-conspirator in the lawsuit. I suggest you give this to your legal counsel immediately." Mrs. Higgins dropped the clipboard. She clutched the envelope like it was a holy relic. I turned to leave. Clay's voice stopped me. It was a low, guttural sound, stripped of all charm, all pretense. "You ungrateful little witch," he hissed. I stopped. I turned back. He was standing at the edge of the stage. He looked ruined. His tie was crooked. His face was a mask of pure hate. "We gave you life," he spat. "We put a roof over your head. We let you live in our house for 30 years. And this is how you repay us? By destroying us in front of our friends?" He pointed a finger at me. "If you walk out that door, Natalie, you are dead to us. Do you hear me? You are cut off. You are not a Patterson anymore. Don't you dare come crawling back when you fail." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had skipped my graduation to throw a party for a car dealer. I looked at the man who had sold my financial future to buy a banner with his name on it. I felt a lightness spread through my chest. It was the weight of obligation falling away. "You didn't cut me off, Dad," I said. My voice was quiet. But in the silent room, it carried to the back corners. "You cut me off 10 years ago," I said. "You cut me off every time you chose a party over my tuition. You cut me off when you skipped my ceremony to network with sponsors. You cut me off when you stole my identity to impress strangers." I looked at Marlene, who was sobbing into her sequins. I looked at Brooke, who was shaking. "I am not ungrateful," I said. "I am just insolvent. And I am not a Patterson anymore. I am the plaintiff." I turned around. Dana was waiting for me. She nodded. "Let's go," she said. We walked toward the double doors. Behind us, the room erupted into chaos. Mr. Henderson was shouting at Clay. Mrs. Higgins was yelling for the police. A glass shattered. I did not look back. We walked into the lobby. The air was cooler here. My phone rang. It was Sloan. I put it on speaker as we walked to the exit. "Did you do it?" Sloane's rasp cracked through the phone. "I did it." I said. "Good." Sloan said. "Now get out. The police are on their way." "Mrs. Higgins called them. Not on you, but on your father. The sponsors are demanding a report. You do not want to be there when the uniforms show up. It gets messy. We are leaving now," Dana said. "Drive safe," Sloan said. "And Natalie?" "Yes." "Happy Independence Day." We walked out into the humid night air. The parking lot was dark. The crickets were singing, indifferent to the destruction of the Patterson legacy inside. We reached Dana's rental car. I opened the passenger door. "Natalie!" I froze. Marlene was running across the parking lot. She had kicked off her heels and was running in her stocking feet, the red sequins flashing under the streetlights. She looked deranged. Her mascara was running down her face in black rivulets. Her hair was coming loose. "Natalie! Wait!" she screamed. Dana stepped in front of me. She put a hand up. "Stay back." "Mrs. Patterson," Dana warned. Marlene ignored her. She threw herself at the hood of the car, gripping the side mirror. "Natalie, please," she sobbed. "You have to fix this. You have to go back in there and tell them it was a joke. Tell them we had permission." I looked at her. "Mom," I said, "it wasn't a joke. They are going to arrest him." Marlene wailed. "Jim Henderson is calling the district attorney." "Natalie, they are going to take the house. They are going to take everything." I said nothing. "We will do anything," Marlene begged. She reached out to grab my hand, her fingers clawing at the air. "We will come to your graduation. We will have a party for you. Just you. No sponsors. I promise. We will be good parents. Just fix this." I looked at her desperate. Ruined face. She was promising to attend a graduation that happened 3 months ago. She was promising to be a parent, not because she loved me, but because she needed a witness to clear her name. She didn't want me. She wanted an alibi. I realized then that she had never really seen me. To her, I was just a character in her play who had gone off script. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry the audience had booed. "It is too late to fix it." "Mom," I said. "Please," she screamed. "What do you want? I'll give you anything. I want you to let go of the car." I said. Marlene stared at me. Her eyes were voids of panic. "Natalie, don't do this," she whispered. "We are your family." "No," I said. "You were my overhead, and I am closing the account." I got into the car and closed the door. Dana got in the driver's side. She started the engine. Marlene banged on the window. She was screaming something, but the glass muffled it. She looked like a ghost, a red sequined ghost haunting a parking lot. Dana put the car in reverse. We backed out. I watched my mother shrink in the side mirror. She stood there, alone in the dark, barefoot on the asphalt, watching her ride drive away. We turned onto the main road. The lights of the country club faded behind us. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Then, Dana reached over and turned on the radio. It was a classic rock station. "Free Fallin'" by Tom Petty was playing. Dana looked at me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I took a deep breath. My hands were finally steady. I looked out the window at the passing town, the gas station where I used to buy slushies, the high school where I was invisible, the road that led to the highway, and the highway that led to the airport, and the airport that led to Brighton Harbor. "I don't have a family anymore," I said. Dana shook her head. "No." She said, "You lost a liability. Now you have space on the balance sheet to find a real family." I looked at her. I thought about Mateo and his empanadas. I thought about Sloan and her leather jacket. I thought about Dr. Aris. I smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. I think I already found them. I said. Dana smiled back. "Next stop, Brighton Harbor." She said. We hit the highway ramp. I watched the sign for Westbridge Hills disappear behind us. I did not look back. I faced forward, toward the coast, toward the work, toward the life that was finally completely Mine. Thank you for listening to My Parents Skipped My Graduation for a Super Bowl Party. A one-way ticket changed my life forever. This story was a journey into the hard reality of breaking free from toxic family systems and reclaiming your own narrative. I would love to hear where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from New York, London, Sydney, or somewhere else entirely? Please leave a comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more realistic, emotional dramas about justice and resilience, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Did Natalie make the right choice by walking away? Should she have given them one last chance? Share your opinions in the comments in English. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, you are the author of your own life. Don't let anyone else hold the pen.